Kevin Steen had built a very impressive resume for himself on the indies. He wrestled all around the world and his work was slowly paying off. By the end of the decade, he was the #1 guy in ROH, but despite all of this, he wasn't on WWE's radar. WWE didn't really value somebody with a different type of look, and Kevin Steen also had a violent element to him that would be hard to execute in this era of WWE. But he finally got a tryout in 2014, and this trial helped Steen tremendously, because the guys that usually came up weren't very skilled talkers. Kevin Steen, though, told a great story about how he's jealous of his best friend Sami Zayn signing that contract and promised to make it his mission to go after him. And this was enough. Kevin Steen was officially a WWE wrestler and was set to report to NXT. Kevin Steen was renamed Kevin Owens in inspiration to Owen Hart and of course his own son. His son's name is Owen. Owens was a prize fighter, a man who valued his family and saw wrestling as the best way to provide for them. He made it a mission to prove the doubters wrong as he usually did in his career by succeeding in WWE. His debut came at TakeOver Our Evolution against CJ Parker, and this man was emotional coming down to the ring. 14 years to get to this very point, and it was finally going to happen. Owens wrestled a very aggressive style and showed a strange level of athleticism for somebody his size. He destroyed Parker, and what a visual. Great way to make his debut. Everyone thought he was going to be a babyface, a fighting babyface at that. That would all change. Later that night, his best friend Sami Zayn finally accomplished the one goal he set since the day he stepped into NXT. Win the title. The match is incredible. It was out of this world, and I personally think it's the very best NXT match of all time. And it was a proud moment for Sami Zayn. When you see this image, it's like, oh, the show's over. Turn off the TV, but then KO proceeds to drop his best friend and powerbomb him on the apron. It was the very best way to establish Kevin Owens, because even though he turned on his best friend, it was on brand for his character. Because at the end of the day, he was a family man and would stop at nothing to make more money and in turn give them a better life. So turning on Sami Zayn means he can wrestle for the belt and win it, meaning he becomes richer. It also gave the fans that didn't know KO, which was a very small amount, 2014 me was certainly that, a reason to follow him. Adrian Neville, damn, just saying that name takes me back, had a huge problem with Sami Zayn's night being spoiled. So he called out Kevin Owens, whose emotions took a 180. For somebody that cared a lot, he sure didn't show that. Neville told him that what he did was shameful. KO told him that his opinion is irrelevant, but what he cares about is being here, because being here gives him a chance to be at the very top. But if Neville wants a fight, he'll get one, and the match was made. As expected, this wasn't Adrian Neville's story. He was being rumored to debut on the main roster as a Mickey Mouse parody or something, but the match itself was a great display of what Owens was capable of. He ended up doing exactly what he did to Sami Zayn on Neville to end the show on top. One thing to mention is that back then, NXT wrestlers rarely appeared often. They were on the Roman Reigns schedule. So Owens disappeared for a bit, but Sami Zayn, on the other hand, finally returned after a month away to address the events of TakeOver Our Evolution. Zayn got deep in his feelings for a moment, saying he hurt him, but at the end of the day, he didn't take him out and implied he would challenge him for the belt. Neville instead came out and got his title shot. Right after the match, Kevin Owens runs in and hits the pop-up powerbomb. This was enough for Sami Zayn to finally show that mean side of his. Problem was, Kevin Owens wasn't around, and William Regal told him to get control of himself. He didn't think this through and said he won't wrestle a match until he gets Kevin Owens. Regal didn't want to give him a title shot like that because it would validate his behavior and actions recently. Zayn begged him to get the match, and that was enough for it to be made official for TakeOver Rival. A contract signing was set between the two, with the rule being if anyone touches the other, the match will be cancelled at NXT TakeOver. And Sami wanted answers. Why did you attack me? The champion almost blamed himself for not seeing this coming despite their friendship for 14 years, but then again, he thought them being friends, tearing each other apart was all to get here. Yet on the night when both of them arrived, Kevin Owens did that. That's all forgotten now because he was going to beat the hell out of him. Now, Owens saw the contract and read non-title. As for what he did at TakeOver, it was just business. He fights anyone, but he fights for the prize, and that's what the NXT Championship is. Until it says NXT Championship match, he won't do it. Zayn had no problem with this, was basically rewarding bad behavior. Sami knew that Owens wasn't going to budge from his position, but Regal obliged and Owens signed. He bent the rules, throwing the pen at him, but the match was on. Sami Zayn went on to talk about the match and said that this was personal. He refused to believe it was just about the title. Owens, on the other hand, was more simple. He said that 2 months to the day he debuted, he's gonna take the NXT Championship. Their match at the show was solid. I didn't like it as much as their other matches. What hurts it a bit is I'm assuming them getting used to wrestling together in WWE. By 2016, they had it all figured out. There was a great story though, with Kevin Owens slowly taking the life out of his own friend and destroying him as the minutes go by. The challenger was poised and absolutely relentless in his pursuit of the NXT Championship. Zayn did have his moments, but this match was all Kevin Owens. He sold his ass off for Sami Zayn and made him look as talented as the company had booked him over the last couple of months, and he was on fire at one point, but landing on his head changed everything, and Owens smelled blood. He pummeled the champion into oblivion and exploited the one problem to the very maximum to become the NXT champion. Zayn was very resilient, but the concussion was doing the talking. He didn't want to quit. The power bombs were taking their toll, and Owens, realizing the title was near, was continuing. Then the referee stopped the match and awarded the title to Kevin Owens. He won the title by very cruel circumstances and had zero regrets. Why? Because he was an honest man. Ever since he came to NXT, he said he'll fight anyone to make his family's life better. Who he beats and how he beats them is irrelevant, so he was looking forward. Finn Balor, the #1 contender. He told him to choose the date for the match, but warned him saying TakeOver is going to happen to him as well. The way they portrayed Kevin Owens stood out because what made him a different heel was his honesty. He wasn't claiming he could win matches the right way. He said he'll win matches for his family. That's what it was, and he was an honest man. There was nothing fraudulent about his character. His actions were terrible, of course, but his character was simple. He'll do anything to provide for his family. Neville put up a fight in the main event, but as expected, he came up short. At this point, KO was bored. He didn't really feel like waiting for the title match, so he attacked Alex Riley, who was on commentary. Riley didn't react well to this and was very interested in the match with Kevin Owens. Regal was seeing things from a logical point of view and refused to grant the match, but KO was still provoking A-Rai, who was on the edge. And after quitting his job as a commentator, William Regal made the match. KO's mission was to make him regret leaving his cushy job, and looking back, this was very strange. The fact that Alex Riley, of all people on the roster, is feuding with Kevin Owens seemed pretty random. But yes, the match went the way you expected, with Riley getting in some offense, but ultimately falling short to Kevin Owens. He tried taking him out afterwards, but Finn Balor came out, and after a little moment, he jumps in for a brawl. He almost hit the coup de grace, but Owens made a run for him. Their title match was good. NXT at this point had a proven formula of how they built these little title matches, and it worked. Balor was a very formidable challenger, but everyone knew the end result. It didn't hurt the match though. Balor felt like a guy who received an opportunity too soon. The story of the match, not his actual placement on the card, because Kevin Owens had a very high level of intelligence. He dissected the knee and exploited any shortcut in his way. The work done on the knee was a great move for Owens, because when Balor did hit the coup de grace, he didn't hit it with all the power. And number two, he couldn't capitalize on the chance, leading to Owens dropping him with the pop-up powerbomb for the victory. Good match. Their best work was ahead though. As for Sami Zayn, he finally returned on the April 1st, 2015 episode of NXT. He said that regardless of his trip to Abu Dhabi, the only thing on his mind was Kevin Owens. He said he's going to use his rematch to recapture his title. His #1 priority though was to kick Kevin Owens' ass. Alex Riley on the side was still looking for Kevin Owens as if he didn't learn his lesson the first time around. He challenged him to a match for next week. The champion wanted to put this thing to rest and wasn't even focused much on him. Riley had more fight this time around as if he had a point to prove, but there was no stopping Kevin Owens. Right when he's about to take him out, Sami Zayn runs in and a vicious brawl ensues. Sami threw caution to the wind and hit a front flip right onto the security, and Kevin Owens realized this wasn't his fight. This was the first time since he debuted that they portrayed him as a regular heel. Owens admitted that this was a personal feud and also claimed that the only reason why it was personal was because of the NXT Championship. Michael Cole didn't see things the same way, so he asked him, if it was somebody else in Sami Zayn's position, would you conduct yourself the same way? Owens thought it was a manipulation from Michael Cole, who wanted a certain answer and didn't show him respect as the champion. Things cooled down and Cole asked, how could he treat a best friend like this? Since Michael Cole couldn't get what he wanted, Owens said that all he could give him is this: Kevin Owens, NXT champion, a family man. That's all he had to say, and he left. That was the interview. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens had one final confrontation ahead of TakeOver. I believe this episode was taped before Sami Zayn suffered his shoulder injury, and I'm certain it changed a lot of plans for him because the feud felt like it had a lot left in the tank. Right as he's about to speak, Kevin Owens interrupted. Now this is where it gets funny. Zayn made mention of his shoulder injury, but it was so obviously taped in. He said that there's an element of truth to Owens doing things for his family, but felt that he was lying and wanted an answer. Then asked if it was about Owens' son and how he'd rather wear a Sami Zayn shirt to school than a KO shirt. Instead of answering, he walked away. Sami Zayn shouted for him to say something, and the champion finally did. He said what Zayn said was irrelevant. When he went away to clear his head, it wasn't that, it was because he hurt him. Owens promised to do it again and said that he's not coming back. The story was very vague. Owens was right, he was here to provide for his family, but it clearly went a step beyond that with Sami Zayn, an element of jealousy that wasn't deeply explored. I don't know if the original plan saw for the feud to continue, because the way things were going, logically, it was gonna lead to the final clash being an intense affair. On the May 18, 2015 episode of Raw, John Cena did the US Open Challenge. Kevin Owens, of all people, answered the challenge, and the commentary did a good job of portraying him as a violent champion. Owens didn't think he should introduce himself to John Cena and said that for those that don't know him, they're not worth his time. John Cena wanted to teach him a lesson, and Owens took offense to Cena treating him like a rookie. He said that he didn't want advice. Cena underestimated him, calling him a scared kid who's trying to rattle him, and if he wants some, he'll get some. Kevin Owens said that he's a prize fighter, but he's already a champion, so he declined. That said, he told Cena that they're gonna fight someday, but on his terms, and he attacked. Cena took the pop-up powerbomb, and Owens stepped on the US Championship. Great way to establish Kevin Owens as a very intelligent heel, especially because he came from NXT. This was back when people had hope for those that debuted from NXT, and even though KO didn't have the body type or look that the main roster loved, there was a little optimism. As for Sami Zayn, he overwhelmed Kevin Owens and showed much more tenacity than in their previous match. The champion was doing nothing and was looking out of it until the pop-up powerbomb on the apron. That was enough to turn things around completely. This man was desperate to capitalize on this, and he did, to the point where William Regal came out and told him to stop because the match was called off. He pulled him away only to take a headbutt. Samoa Joe, of all people, debuted, and man, did he look so out of place here. It just looked so strange to see Samoa Joe in WWE. It was just weird. Kevin Owens was like, not tonight. And he walked away because he wanted the show to end on a positive note. The fans apparently don't want to see him fight Samoa Joe. William Regal came out looking for answers as to who attacked Hideo Itami. Solomon Crow came out and trashed Owens, leading to a match, and you guys know how that ended. Owens took care of him, but Joe spoiled the party. Elimination Chamber proved to be the coming out party for Kevin Owens. It was an incredible display from both men, and the funny part was, it was only the beginning. John Cena and Kevin Owens had a great feud. Their chemistry was impeccable and had potential to grow further. 2015 was filled to the very top with amazing matches. Everything felt fresh because the style changed. This match is the very example of an excellent WWE match from that year. We weren't seeing this kind of stuff in previous years. Kevin Owens was shown to have wisdom beyond his years and made good on his experience claim, and the end result was absolutely stunning. Kevin Owens with a pop-up powerbomb best John Cena clean. It did so much for him as a heel who debuted and said that he's a prize fighter, a man that doesn't back down from fights, barring the Samoa Joe thing, to go out there and beat the face of the company decisively. I cannot overstate how stunning this result was. Yeah, 2015 John Cena wasn't the same, but this was the first man that beat him clean since Brock Lesnar, and before that, Daniel Bryan. Great way to establish Kevin Owens on the main roster. An instant star, but of course, they had to follow up. Kevin Owens, though, was making an enemy out of everyone at this point. Finn Balor was his next challenger. Cena wanted a rematch. Samoa Joe still wanted to fight. He told Joe that he's a bit of a rookie in NXT, and it was very similar to John Cena's open challenge thing, except he told him that he has to earn this opportunity. Unfortunately for him, that wasn't his decision to make, because William Regal made a match between the two. The match with John Cena had much higher expectations, which is tough because their match at Elimination Chamber was nothing short of excellent. What made this match better is that these two thought, screw it, let's just go all out from the beginning. And it helped a lot that they developed their chemistry earlier on, because Money in the Bank 2015 was yet another standout in John Cena's US title reign. The formula for these type of matches is overdone nowadays, but back then, at least to me, it felt so fresh to see them countering all these moves, kicking out the last second, and brought more drama to the matches. The win for Cena came after several AAs, with the last one being from out of nowhere, and he showed plenty of respect to Owens, who paid back the favor by dropping him with a powerbomb on the apron. As for Samoa Joe, that match was far too intense for a proper result. Both men despised each other, and it showed. It was only getting worse for Kevin Owens because he had to set his sights towards Balor. But Samoa Joe was making things tough for him as well. They faced off in tag team action where the Prince proved that he can beat the NXT champion ahead of Beast in the East. At this point, the feud was abandoned between Samoa Joe and Kevin Owens, which I personally feel is unfortunate because they never had a proper singles match. They only had that match on NXT, which ended with them brawling and that no contest thing. I think it should have continued afterwards. That said, Beast in the East was pretty special. I thought it was very unique at the time, and looking at the situation, this was set up for Kenta Hideo Itami to win the belt. It made too much sense, but a shoulder injury got in the way. They also implied that Kevin Owens took him out. I'm going to talk about this in detail for a Finn Balor NXT video, but long story short, Balor had a huge amount of energy and intensity early on. Kevin Owens was more of a showman here and wasn't taking the match as serious as he should have. Now, of course, when the situation called for it, he changed. The action was much more exciting here than their previous match, and the atmosphere was stunning. The fans were fully behind Finn Balor. With the most eyes on them, Balor and Owens made sure to make their presence felt. The Demon's homecoming was wrapped in gold because he managed to beat Kevin Owens to become the NXT champion. WWE is going all in with Finn Balor to ensure he's their next big star, whereas Kevin Owens accomplished everything he could in NXT. He was leaning towards the main roster, and if anything, he was more on the main roster than NXT. His match with John Cena at Battleground was yet another memorable bout. I don't think it was as good as their previous match, not to mention the result. I personally think it should have gone the other way, because Kevin Owens beating John Cena again, and this time for the title, would have been huge, but he went 2-1. He, of course, lost here, so Cena was 2. And this time by submission. Owens, though, was booked very strong. He kicked out of everything, even a super AA, but it all came down to the STFU. I heard some say it's a burial, which I think is funny because that's literally an overreaction. MacLeod should have won here. My reasoning is that the US title was better suited for Kevin Owens, because after this, it was only Seth Rollins and Alberto Del Rio who won the belt. He ended up giving the US title to Del Rio, and it was very underwhelming. As for Kevin Owens, he had one more title shot, and it was at TakeOver Brooklyn in a ladder match. This was obvious as day, but it didn't take away from the match. Great ladder match. People are going to overlook it because of Bayley and Sasha Banks, and of course it being a random NXT ladder match from the year 2015. It's not talked about often, but it was pretty good. Finn Balor ended up retaining the title after the coup de grace from the top of the ladder and retrieving the belt, and Owens was officially on the main roster from here on. Overall, Kevin Owens' time on NXT was incredible. What made it so good is the fact that WWE knew what they had with KO, the fact that he could talk, he could wrestle, he had charisma, and they fast-tracked him. I think it's kind of strange how Sami Zayn had only one successful title defense to his name, but they really loved Kevin Owens, so for him to do that, it showed how much they valued him. I know it's NXT, and at the end of the day, you know, the main roster is different, but it goes to show how much Triple H saw in Kevin Owens to have him destroy Sami Zayn in his very first title match. He went through there, everyone was an enemy of his, everyone was a rival of his, and it was KO versus the world. I love the way they booked him here because he wasn't a regular heel who runs away. Of course, he ran away as time went on. He comes in, he's like, I want to fight you, doesn't run away, kicks ass. I think it was cool. It obviously wasn't going to be sustainable on the main roster because people are going to like that. But for the first couple of months where KO was this super heel that would not back down, that would say and do exactly what he said, I thought it was amazing. Alright, what do you guys think of Kevin Owens' NXT run? Please comment down below, and that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the Swanton Bomb on the like button and perhaps the pop-up power bomb on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.